everyone, and welcome to the first primer that we'll be doing on this channel. Today we'll be talking about Modern Hammer Time, which is an aggro combo deck which seeks to abuse Colossus Hammer in order to power out early wins. The deck's playstyle is extremely reminiscent of decks such as Infect and Bogles, as it is a deck that can win extremely quickly by pumping otherwise harmless creatures. It is built to synergize with Hammer, using a suite of tutors to find it, along with several methods to work around its downsides, such as its high equip cost. While a worse version of the deck existed in the past, the Origin version has been the go-to for deck builders since the printing of Lures of the Dream Den, which gives the deck the possibility to recur key cards and fight through disruption. All successful Hammer Time lists share a common core of cards which is pretty much universally agreed upon at this point in time. All decks run 20 to 21 lands, as the deck's cards are on average extremely cheap mana-wise. The mana base includes 6 basic planes, snow covered or not, 1 Godless Shrine as a fetchable source of black mana which will be relevant post-board, 4 Silent Clearings which provide much needed card draw in the Order of Colors, 4 Inkmoth Nexus which we will look at in more detail later, and either 5 or 6 fetchlands depending on your personal preference. Whether or not to run the 6th fetchland will determine whether you run the full playset of Memnites or just 3 of them. The exact fetchland is irrelevant as long as it can fetch a plains, as the deck runs no basic swamps and the only fetchable black source is also a plains. Let's now look at the creatures that these lands will be powering out. One of the key cards in the deck is Pure Seal Paladin. Both abilities on the Paladin are extremely relevant. Drawing a card for each equipment means that we can ensure that we have some gas in the tank as long as we can play our equipment, but it's the second ability which really makes the Paladin shine. As long as you have 3 or more artifacts in play, you can equip them for 0 mana, which makes your hammer much more manageable if it's sitting on the board unequipped. The deck needs to run a large number of artifacts in order to enable Metalcraft, which it achieves not only with the titular hammer, but also playsets of Ornithopter and Memnite. Mishra's Bauble rounds out the artifact package, as it not only aids with Metalcraft, but turns into a draw engine with Lures. The second key creature in the deck is Stoneforge Mystic. The once banned card functions as additional copies of all of our equipment and is fundamental in giving the deck consistency. The deck runs 4 of them, for obvious reasons, as it ensures that our hammers not only reach our hand, but can also be cheated into play, avoiding permission spells. This tutoring effect is so good and so necessary that the deck also runs a full playset of Steel Shaper's Gift, meaning that we effectively run 12 copies of Colossus Hammer. Rounding off the equipment package is a single copy of Shadow Spear, which not only gives the equipped creature lifelink, which is direly needed against aggro matchups, but also trample, so that the deck can consistently push damage through. The remaining creature in the deck, as mentioned before, is a full playset of Inkmoth Nexus. While technically a land, the Nexus is a creature which is not only immune to sorcery speed removal, but can also win in half the time by inflicting infect damage. On top of all of this, when transformed, the Nexus is an artifact creature, thus counting towards Metalcraft and synergizing with the Paladin. Sneakily getting a hammer onto a Nexus can ensure that you win as early as turn 3. The way to do this is by using Sigarda's Aid, which not only lets you cast equipment at instant speed, but you may also immediately attach an equipment to a creature when said equipment enters the battlefield. This is the second strongest card in the deck, only behind Pure Steel Paladin, and it is one of 2 key enablers along with the Paladin. The final piece of the puzzle is none other than Lures of the Dream Den. While creature-based combos are vulnerable to removal and hand disruption, Lures exists in order to give the deck much needed resilience. If Lures hits the board, it can immediately bring back any of the pieces we are missing as long as they're in the graveyard. This can be a hammer, a Stoneforge Mystic to tutor for the hammer, a Paladin to equip the hammer for free, or even Sigarda's Aid. If Lures sticks to the board, the game is surely won. For this reason, it is imperative to play Lures only when you can immediately reap value from it, or if you can ensure that it will survive until you untap. While all Hammer Time decks have agreed on the aforementioned core of 53 cards, the remaining 7 are not quite flexible either. Most decks fall under one of 2 variants. The first variant runs a playset of Giver of Runes and 3 Springleaf Drums. Giver of Runes can protect any of the creatures from the abundance of removal in the format, as well as allowing them to dodge blockers, while the drum helps with Metalcraft and turns our non-attacking creatures into mana sources. The second variant runs a more diverse equipment suite, with a Quarter's Shield and Paradise Mantle as 0-cost artifacts, Swiftfoot Boots protecting our creatures, and Cranial Plating functioning as an alternate win condition. This variant also runs a moderate suite of disruption by playing 1 Thoughtseize and 1 Path to Exile. If you expect to face a large number of aggro and midrange deck, the Giver version is better since it's better suited to face against removal, while the equipment version is better equipped, pun most certainly intended, against control and combo decks. Choose accordingly, depending on the expected metagame. Given that the deck has Lures as a companion, it only has 14 slots to fill instead of the usual 15. There are 2 cards all variants run, which are Auric Champion and Thoughtseize. Auric Champion is a fantastic creature against decks heavy on removal, such as Burn or Jund, while Thoughtseize lets you disrupt combo and scout out your opponent's hand. The rest of the slots can be tailored to what the meta requires, and both black and whites provide a host of incredible tools. Some of the options are Collective Brutality, Fatal Push, Pithing Needle, Burnt or Forged Tender, Deafening Silence, Tormod Script, Ether Sword Canonist, and many others. Note that all permanents must have a converted mana cost of 2 or lower, so that Lures can still be chosen as a companion after sideboarding. When it comes to matchups, the deck thrives against decks which pack little interaction. You typically outrace other decks and can combo off if left unchecked. Against most red and black based decks, you are sufficiently fast enough to kill them before they kill you, and have the resilience to ground out a fair game using Lures and the tutors. Matchups like this are where the deck thrives, functioning as a mid-range toolbox with a combo finish. On the flip side, this means that interactive matchups can be really hard. You can outrace most mid-range decks, which try to 1-for-1 you, but permission spells will make your life miserable. Control in particular is an extremely tough matchup, as they can interact with all of your pieces on the stack, exile your creatures with Path to Exile, and even steal some of your permanents using Archmage's Charm. Force of Negation means that your Hammers and Sigardasate are in danger even if your opponent is tapped out, and the Exile means that Lures cannot get them back. Most other matchups are not so lopsided. Tron, for example, is 50-50 depending on your draws and theirs. Oblivion Stone and other sweepers are an absolute blowout, as well as Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Karn Liberated can exile any of your pieces, so you need to be ready to kill them on turn 3 or risk getting demolished. In matchups such as these, make sure to bring in Thoughtseize and Pithing Needle out of the side. That being said, you need to be careful with over sideboarding. By virtue of being a combo deck, you do have a core that you cannot mess too much with, or else the deck ceases to function. You usually are the proactive player. Think about the cards that will help the combo resolve and stick to the board. Against aggro decks, you usually want to cut out the Mem Knights, especially if they're playing cards such as Renin 6 or Lava Dart, and bring in Fatal Push. Also, if they are playing a red or black based deck, be sure to bring in Auric Champion and take out your Springleaf Trumps. If you're playing against a control or combo deck, cards such as Pithing Needle and Thoughtseize are ideal, whereas Shadow Spear is not so good. If you're playing against combo, which does not interact very well with your creatures, take out Giver of Runes. The following is a pretty typical box standard deck list that you can expect to face in leagues if you play against Hammer Time, and that you can use as a starting point to build your own. Since your deck curves out at 2, sequencing your early turns is crucial towards ensuring a winning game plan. When evaluating your early plays, try to prioritize an explosive start while protecting your game pieces. Usually this means playing Sigarda's 8 as soon as possible. Springleaf Drum should only be played first if you can either activate it immediately with a 0-mana creature, or if you can activate it next turn to dump your hand onto the board for an explosive turn 3. It basically turns creatures with summoning sickness into mana. Otherwise, Giver of Runes is the preferred turn 1 play, in order to protect future creatures. If you are playing against a combo or control deck, you may want to prioritize casting Thoughtseize early, in order to scout their possible plays and disrupt their game plan. You do not always want to crack your Mishra's Baubles, as it will count towards Metalcraft for the Paladin, so make sure to plan ahead. Also, with Metalcraft enabled, Paradise Mantle turns all creatures into lands, as you can tap them to generate mana while equipping for 0. Remember that turning Inkmoth Nexus into a creature turns it into an artifact as well, so you only need one additional artifact to enable Metalcraft if you have your equipment out. Giver of Runes can protect your Inkmoth Nexus from land destruction. The Inkmoth can pay for its own ability, and once it's a creature, you can give it protection from the destruction source using the Giver of Runes, such as protection from red for pillage, or protection from colorless for effects such as Field of Ruin. Be careful with protection for colorless, as it will remove any equipment attached to your creatures. If you have Sigarda's 8 in play and a flying creature, make sure to play and attach the hammer after blockers have been declared. Remember that the hammer makes your creature lose flying, so it could be a disaster if you are attacking for lethal and attach it before blockers have been declared. Once the ghost is clear, cast your hammer and equip it with the 8 trigger. I will now show you some actual hands from matches I played in the Modern League. Please pause the video after they are shown and think whether you would keep or mull that hand. I will share my thought process after a short pause. This is a hand I would keep, and it's actually one of the best hands you can hope for. You have 2 lands, multiple tutors, and multiple paladins, as well as the possibility to curve out. If you are playing against a deck that cannot remove your paladin, it is best to cast him on turn 2, so that you can tutor on turn 3 and attack straight away. While this hand seems to have it all, it is lacking white mana. The drum does provide us with 1, but if we don't draw a white source, the hand is dead. I would mulligan this hand. This is a pretty straightforward keep, as you have every piece of the combo and can think about swinging as early as turn 3. This is another easy keep, as we have multiple lands, a tutor, metalcraft, and a paladin. While double paladin is fantastic, this hand does nothing on its own. It's a pretty straightforward mulligan. This hand is another easy keep, as we can equip our paladin as early as turn 2 and go swinging as early as turn 3, without worrying that it will die to a burn spell. So what conclusions can be derived from this? Beyond the obvious based on if not keeping one-landers, a hand that the deck wants to keep must have a coherent course of action that lets it attack on turn 3 with an equipped creature. This necessarily involves sufficient mana sources, either lands or drums, a hammer in play, either naturally or with a tutor, and a way to cheat the hammer's equip cost, either with Sigarda's Aid or with the paladin. So that is it for the primer. If you liked the video or otherwise found it useful, kindly let me know by either leaving a comment, a like, subscribing, or any combination thereof. I will be uploading more primers in the future, but for now, this has been the primer for Modern Hammer Time. Thanks for watching!